Okay, one of the interesting things about making confidence intervals for variance and standard deviation is that StatCrunch only considers the variance. It does not consider standard deviation. So if you go to stat variance stats one sample, you notice you don't have any place to select standard deviation. You only have a place to select variance. So let's do some summary data first. So I'll go ahead and open this. Now in this particular problem 9.4.11, you're given some summary data, a sample size, a sample variance. So when you go into here, if you have the sample variance of 12.2, sample size 20, you can select confidence interval and put in the level of confidence, 0.9, 0.95, 0.99, whatever you want, and then click compute. So you get these. Now one thing I would suggest is if you have a problem that gives you the standard deviation instead of the variance, what we need to do is I'll go in and edit. So if you are given the standard deviation, remember the variance is just the square of that. So what I need to do is go ahead and square my standard deviation. So here's a little calculator. Let's say I have a standard deviation given of 2.3. If I square that, then 5.29 is the variance that I would input here in the sample variance area with the same sample size. Now what happens, let's say I do 5.29 with the same sample size, go ahead and compute. What I actually want is the confidence interval for the standard deviation, so now I need to convert back. So I'm going to take my lower limit, I'll copy that with a Control-C, I'll go back to my calculator, and let's see, I need to clear this. Apparently I just, oh, there it is. So I need to clear, and I can do Control-V to paste it in here and square root. So now what I see is I squared the initial standard deviation to be able to work with the variance, and now the confidence interval limits are for variance. So if I take a square root now, I get back to standard deviation limits. So this would be the lower limit for the standard deviation. I could do the same thing here with the upper limit. Control-C to copy, go back here, and clear that out, Control-V, and square root, and I'm back to standard deviation. So you can go back and forth between standard deviation and variance fairly easily just by squaring and square rooting. So now let's go ahead and come back here to edit. You can also, of course, do all of this with raw data. And for example, when you are given raw data, you would not need to worry about squaring the initial value, of course, because that's calculated by StatCrunch. You would only need to square root the lower and upper limits. So when you only have a tool for variance, you do need to make adjustments for standard deviation. So let's see, I think that's about it. So I guess email back if you have any other questions. And I just discovered one other thing actually after I closed this out. If we go here, you can actually square right in here. So if 2.3 is your sample standard deviation, just use the caret and the 2, say compute, and it will treat that as 2.3 squared, and it will give you exactly the same lower and upper limits. So you don't need to use a separate calculator. You can just do your basic calculations right in the dialog box for the test and the confidence intervals.